So here we are in the season of Advent. And as I'm sure you're aware, the season of Advent is focused on preparedness, anticipation, and offering celebration as we journey towards the miracle of birth of Jesus at Christmas. And we break this season of Advent into four kind of sections, as I'm sure you're aware. We have hope, peace, we have joy, and we have love, all as a celebration of the revelation of God in the person of Jesus Christ at the center. Yet, in the midst of this love and joy and peace and so on, we are not just silent bystanders. It's not as if this miraculous event automatically instilled in each of us great joy, great peace, great love, and so on. That to be people of faith, to be followers of Jesus, is that we are called to be co-creators, that is, partners in the desire to find joy and hope and peace and love in our world. And it's often, as I'm sure you're well aware, extraordinarily difficult, but it is an immense responsibility, and it takes extraordinary discipline and care on our part. And I am sure that if I asked any one of you, as a matter of fact, I'm sure if I asked any person on this planet how they would like to live, I am sure they would say we want to live with hope and joy and peace and love. It goes without saying, that would be the desire of us as human beings. Giving and receiving one to the other. Living without fear, anxiety, without marginalization, oppression, cruelty, and evil. Yet there's so much that keeps us from living this out, this reality. There's so much that keeps us from living this desired way of being. Ideally, that would be our preferred way to live together. We really are a sorry lot when it comes to this as a human family. We really are. We inflict so much heartache and so much sorrow on each other. We can be so innately mean and evil and cruel beyond comprehension and words, and we don't need to look far in our newspapers or through the course of history of what we've done to each other. It's so much easier somehow to be cruel and evil and dark than it is to be loving and joyful and peaceful. And I just find that hard to understand, but it's part of our human frailty. And the challenge for us as co-creators, as partners of God in this journey of life where God reconciled God's self to us through this person of Jesus, is that we must find ways to seek out to be joyful, loving, peaceful, and so on. Living harmoniously. And the way I honestly believe we must focus our attention is towards the theme of this Advent season, that is, towards reconciliation. Reconciliation. Reconciliation is the capacity to be restored to wholeness. Reconciliation is the ability to live in harmony. And we don't have to go far to hear those words, because St. Paul himself, in the letter to 2 Corinthians, he says this. Paul said, "All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ, and has given us the ministry of reconciliation." That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses, not counting our screw-ups, but entrusting the message of reconciliation to us. That is our job. To seek and to be reconciled. Now, in the fancy theological language that we learn in divinity school, we hear about what's called atonement theology. That is, that Jesus atoned for us, a relationship between God and us by his death upon the cross and resurrection, that somehow in that event we were atoned for our sins. Now, truth be told, I am not a big atonement theology guy. That sort of takes us off the hook. I'm of the mind that Jesus did come and died for us on the cross in a particular manner, but he said that but it is up to you to continue this action of reconciliation. That's God's command, and God's question to you is how you might reconcile yourself to each other, and by reconciling yourself to each other, you are reconciled to God himself. A reconciliation is necessary when a relationship is broken. But it can only happen if truth is spoken, heard, and acknowledged. Reconciliation, to repeat, can only happen if truth is heard, spoken, and acknowledged, and heard. We have, as I say, countless examples of our failure throughout the course of history. And we have individual moments in our own lives where we have had a broken relationship that we have let fester. And we've allowed it to carry on in our deepest soul, and in some manner we have the capacity to push it aside, to repress it, to try to put it behind us, not have it continue to inform our lives, and yet it always remains. It never goes away unless it is addressed through truth-telling. Truth-telling is the first step towards reconciliation. Yet it seems today, I'm sorry to say, pick up a paper, turn on CNN. Truth is a very, very much endangered species in our society right now. The truth is under siege. What really worries me about what's going on in Western civilization, Western culture right now, and particularly what's happening in the United States with the administration that exists there, is that he and they are making lying and deceit normative and turning it into an art form. To such a degree that as a civilization we are beginning to become numb and conditioned to accepting this kind of behavior as being okay. Hence, it is just what we do. It's just what happens. It's just politics. It's just the way we are. I'm sorry to say, I do not think that is true. And there are examples of this. I mean, one of the scary things is that the Oxford Dictionary in 2016, the word of the year was post-truth. The word of the year was post-truth, after truth. And in one of the big media outlets, I don't remember if it's the New York Times or Washington Post, in 2016, during the campaign, this was the headline. It said, "Find out who lied about what and why." Find out who lied about what and why. This is as if we expect this to be happening. People are beginning to make a living making money from fact-checking. Taking a lie and dismissing it and finding the true facts about it. There's something wrong with that picture that we have to fact-check. But the challenge is that it is often easier to live in the midst of deception than in living in the midst of the truth. The truth is challenging and difficult. Truth-telling is elusive. It is often, as I say, easier to live than denial. We create our own truth sometimes to suit our own particular needs, our own clinging to power, or a need to keep others oppressed, or to deflect the way people might think about us. And I won't ask you to tell the truth right now, but I want you to just think and to metaphorically raise your hand. Have you ever told a white lie? Well, some of you are. Go ahead. How many of you have told a white lie? So why do we tell white lies?
To protect someone else sometimes.
Pardon?
To protect someone else.
Protect someone else, protect ourselves, to what other reasons?
Sometimes it's easier.
It's easier. It's easier to tell the white lie than tell the truth. How many of you have called in sick to work and you haven't been sick? You know?
It's a mental health day.
A mental health day. We have that ability to rationalize that it's okay, you know. And we have varying degrees of truth telling and white lie telling. And that we all have that propensity because we are vulnerable and fragile people. And it is easier to tell white lies because we want to protect ourselves. But on a more global scale, as the lies get bigger and the stories and the narrative gets more obscene and obscure, we end up with situations throughout the course of history where people are marginalized, oppressed, and generalized in a manner that is beyond inhumane. We go back hundreds of years to the slave trade and how people of color living in Africa are somehow less than. In more recent years, in the conflict in Kosovo and Serbia and Bosnia, that they were able to diminish others, either Muslims or Serbs or Croats, in a manner that dehumanized them. We don't need to talk about the Second World War and the Nazi propaganda. We know what happened in Uganda in the early 1990s and the way in which the Tutsis and the Hutus came together and completely diminished one another as less than humans. And on we go. The internment camps of the Second World War, where Japanese people were somehow considered less than and were put in these camps just because of their heritage. And as we well know, the history of residential schools in the Anglican Church of Canada and how we thought we were going to take the Indian out of the kid. And what kind of legacy that has left for hundreds of thousands of people who are struggling with pain and intergenerational trauma. Reconciliation cannot happen without truth telling. And I want to offer you one small example, a personal example. It has to do with my son Christopher, who's not here. Thank goodness. When Christopher was 5 years old, he and I were the only people at home one day. And I was doing laundry, and I took a pair of pants, and I pulled out a $5 bill, and I put it on the washing machine. Put the washing when away it went, and I left. And I remember, oh, the $5 bill. I went back a few minutes later to get the $5 bill, and it was gone. So I said to Christopher, what'd you do with the $5 bill? Nothing, Daddy. I didn't take it. Oh, Christopher, you're 5 years old, remember? Where's the $5 bill? Daddy, I didn't take it. I promise, Daddy, I promise. Christopher, I know you did. I know you took that $5 bill. Daddy, I didn't take the $5 bill. I really didn't. Christopher, go to your room. So this is our lunchtime. I said, until you confess to me that you took the $5 bill, you're going to stay in your room. I said, the punishment's going to be worse than what you actually did. I was rationalizing, I was cajoling, and I was getting angry, and then I'd get sappy, and my daddy, I didn't take it, I really didn't. And he was in his bed, and he was crying, and I said, fine, I closed the door. Finally, around dinner time, I caved. I went up to the room, I said, Christopher, I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Come on out. He spent the entire afternoon in his bedroom. I said, my gosh, what a mean daddy I am. Fast forward 10 years. I was telling this story one day. Christopher was there. He starts to giggle. Hey, Dad, remember the $5 bill? I took it. I said, you paid the price. You spent all afternoon in the room. He said, yeah. He said, because I was too ashamed. I was too ashamed. He didn't want to be embarrassed. He couldn't deal with the shame. He was scared of what might happen, even though I was trying to convince him that everything was going to be okay. He was not willing to accept responsibility. He was not willing to hear the truth and to accept the truth and face the demon, his own demon. The demon of having to admit. And that is the same for all of us, both individually and as nations and as a human family. We are unwilling to accept the responsibility and to hear the truth. But by hearing the truth, acknowledging the truth, accepting our demons, we are becoming the people that God would have us be. That is how God reconciled God's self to us. Because God said, my Son is here to help you understand that you are frail and you make mistakes. It's not all perfect. But in His life, as you follow Him, you have a guiding light to help you understand that by following in Jesus' footsteps, there will be hope and love and joy and peace. In our first reading from Isaiah this morning, we hear the ultimate desire of where we want to be. And just to remind you, Isaiah said, God will show you the way He works so we can live the way we're made. God will show us the way He works so we can live the way we're made. He'll settle things fairly between nations. He'll make things right between many peoples. He'll turn their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. No more nation will fight against nation. They won't play war anymore. Come, family of Jacob, let's live in the light of God. In our Advent time, we tell our truth to ourselves, I pray to each other, and ultimately to God. In an atmosphere of hope, love, joy, and peace. Thanks be to God.